class, I wanted to go through the setup of how you do the scene. I'm not going to go extensively into the coding because we all have the coding from the resources, but I wanted to go over how to set everything up in the scene. So the first thing that you're going to do is say you have a blank scene. And we are going to, you can first make the quad if you'd like for the ground. And so what you're going to want to do with that, rotate that 90 degrees, and then we can position it at 0, 0, 0. I like to make it like pretty big. Let's actually make it like 50. Well, we don't need to change the Y, but we need to change the Z. Or is it the, it is the Y. But yeah, so make that nice and big. After we've made our quad, we can lower it just a little bit. That way the player can go on top of it. But then after that, we're going to focus on making our player. So next I am going to create an empty object. I'm going to call it player prefab. And then I am going to create a child of that object that is going to be a capsule. And that's going to be our player. And now I've got my player prefab. And then you just go over to prefabs. I would drag it into here to make it a prefab, but I already have a player prefab, so I'll end up bringing that out after I show you the steps for everything else. So what else you would do is you're going to bring the main camera onto the player. And you're going to make it a child of the player. And then you would change the positioning of this, so like 0, 0.5, 0, so that it is about like head height for the player. And so you've got all of those. And there's one other thing you're going to need for the player prefab, and that's an empty object as the child of the camera called a bullet spawner. And we'll get into this later, but you'll probably want to adjust that a little so you can like play with the bullet spawner after you've got everything all set up, because you'll understand what I mean by you'll want to adjust it a little. But, and then besides for that, the only place where you need any code on your player prefab is in here. So first you're going to add a player input. If you don't already have actions, you're going to create actions there. But since I already do, I'm just going to go to the first player input actions and put those in. You are going to need a character controller. And you are going to need your script that we did from class. And once you have your script, you're going to have a few things you're going to need to drag into there. Jump height, I'm going to make that one. But you don't need to have jump height, that's not required, but I'll go over that. But so all you got to do is put your main camera in there, put the bullet spawner in there, and then the bullet we will put in there after. But we've got, for the main part, our player prefab is set up. We just need that bullet dragged in. And then next we'll just create some enemies. So we're going to go create empty enemy prefab. And then we're going to create a queue. Just call it enemy. And so we've got our little enemy prefab. There's not a super lot to this. You don't need an is trigger collider. You're just going to need to add your script to this. Since I already have an enemy prefab though, I'm going to delete this and I'll just show you this. So this is actually from my other scene. You can see because I made a prefab of it, I can just drag it into this scene. So I've got my enemy prefab, and as you can see, my enemy script is on the object itself and not the empty object. And then you just set your health to whatever you'd like your health to be and put your enemy script on there. And that's all we need to do for the enemy. And since I went through the steps on how to make the player prefab, I'm just going to delete this and drag in my actual player prefab from the other game. And then all there is left is you're going to create your bullets. So we're going to create an empty. We're going to call it bullet prefab. And then we're going to create a child, and it's going to be a sphere for a little bullet. You can make it like pretty tiny, because bullets are pretty tiny. And it doesn't really matter where this is on the scene right now. You want to make sure there's is trigger on. And then let me rename this to bullet just to keep it nice and clean. And then you're going to make sure that you tag this with bullet or whatever you named the tag that's in your script. And now for your bullet prefab, you may think, oh, I want to put the script and everything that I need for it on the bullet itself. But you actually want to put the script and the rigid body on the bullet prefab. So, and then we've got our bullet script. You're gonna want to increase the speed, because if you don't increase the speed, your bullets are probably gonna like go downwards and they're not gonna go very fast. And they won't really go in a straight direction. But that's all for making the bullet prefab. So I'll drag in this so you can see it, even though we don't actually need the bullet prefab itself in the scene. But as you can see, I've done everything the same as what it was on the one that I had just made. But we don't actually need this in the scene, so we can delete it. All you need is to have the bullet prefab dragged in to the first player script. That's all you need for that. You don't need it in the actual scene when you start the scene. You just need the bullet prefab dragged in here. And now I believe that should, just with our script and everything, work now. As you can see, I've got bullets spawning. And now I'm going to show you something I did on my other scene to kind of make it a little bit easier to see where the bullets are going to be. So we'll save this scene. So as you can see, I have a canvas on this screen. What do I have on this canvas? I have a crosshair, as I named it. So what I did is I went to add UI image, and then I just changed the color of that image, changed the size of that image, and then after I played around with the bullet spawner, I changed the where I wanted it on the screen to try to make it go with the bullet spawner. It's not perfect, but as you can see, I get a little bit better of a crosshair. And that's something where it's just like, you can play around with it to make it so that you have a crosshair exactly where you want to set it up. But that's something where if you want your players to be able to see where you're shooting, it's helpful to add that. And that is the main portion of just adding everything. As you can see, just like with the other scene, I've got the player prefab, I've got the enemies, which in here I have all of my enemy prefabs. It helps to group them together. The bullet prefab I do have in the scene here, but I'm going to delete it to show you I don't need it. because as long as you've got the prefab below put in, you just got bullets. And now there is one last thing that I'd like to go over with you, and that is what you're going to need to get that optional jump code working. So I've got it pulled up here, and we've got optional things that we added for the jump code. If you want this to work, which I switched a few little things where I just changed it here instead of here. Not a huge deal, because you can also change it in the inspector. But you have all of your optional jump code put in. And you're like, why isn't this working? So, you have to do more than just input the jump code here. And one thing, too, that's very, very important to note. In your update function, you're going to want your jump code before your controller.move, or else your jump code will not work, because it will be registering this controller.move before your actual jump code goes. So what you got to do to get your jump code to work is just go to your assets, wherever you have your player input, open it up, and you're just going to create a new action and name it jump. And so you just click this button up here, this little plus, to add a new action. I already have the action, so I don't need to. So I'm just going to get rid of that. But I'll just show you here. So we've got our jump code. And then you just add, I have it on space keyboard, and I wanted to put it on right mouse button just for for fun. But you're just gonna put jump as a button. You're gonna put it, you can put it wherever you'd like. There's a bunch of different paths you can use. I've put it on the spacebar. Then you just check mark keyboard and mouse. And now if I play the scene, I'll show you that my player jumps. And that's how you get the jump code working. And now we didn't get into the actual code and how it works in this because we went over most of the code in class. But if you have any questions about the code, feel free to reach out. Or if something is not working, even after watching this video, getting everything all set up, feel free to reach out. And if you have any questions, let us know. I hope your projects go well.